As the only self-proclaimed Canadian on this hellscape, I just gotta come clean and tell you, all these retrospectives I see on Adult Swim, Toonami and all that, they don't do a thing for me. Now don't get me wrong, they're fascinating as someone who didn't grow up with them, but there's so many of them that they're starting to mesh together. I'm so sick of the Space Ghost Changed Everything, the staying up past bedtimes to watch Cowboy Bebop, and how they all start with the same bit that goes, "Bum, bum, all kids out of the pool for Adult Swim, bum, 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 all kids out." I am sick of it! I'm from a generation who tuned into stuff made for Canadian audiences, and our late night adult block of choice was the Detour on Teletoon. Got a lot of fond memories watching this block, as I'm sure many others do. But what shocks me is there's over 30 million Canadians out there, and not one of yous has made a Detour retrospective. Why? I know some folks who are so far gone, they think it was always called Teletoon at night, and it makes me want to scream. So again, I do the work nobody else wants to do, but it's cool. This'll be the only video you'll need. I'll be going over the history of the block and some of the homegrown shows that made it worth remembering. You might know some of these shows yourself, and there might be a couple you've never heard of, but trust me, they're all worth checking out. Before we get to all that though, I want to cover Teletoon's history with adult animation pre-Detour. Starting out, programming was split into 4 blocks for different age groups: preschool, kids, families, and adults. Some shows crossed over into other blocks, but it gave a general idea of what to expect. None of these blocks had names either, but most fans called the adult block Night Planet. And truthfully, most of the nighttime stuff wasn't adult at all, like X-Men, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Tasmania, but there was some stuff for the older crowd. There was The Simpsons, which also aired in the family block, but you also had Duckman, a British show called Pond Life, even the HBO Spawn series, that's super hardcore. They also played a few anime, like the first 13 episodes of Dragon Ball Z on loop, the OVA Macross Plus, and some films from distributor Manga Entertainment. Patlabor 1 and 2, The Wings of Hanaeamize, and Ninja Scroll. The latter, I have heard, is complete unhinged madness. You know, at the start of 2024, I saw the 80s fever dream heavy metal gifted to me by my friend Microphone, and he told me that movie was basically Night Planet in a nutshell. This era was way too early for me though. I was a literal baby and didn't catch a wink of it. All I remember is seeing a couple night bumpers and how they scared me witless. I love how creative all the different blocks and their bumpers are, but the night ones take the cake. Adult Swim viewers talk about how the dawn is your enemy. Well, up here, that was the opposite. Teletoon's next adult foray was with the block Teletoon Unleashed, which some say started in 2002, but looking at old forum posts and schedule logs, I've got the definitive premiere date. Saturday, September 1st, 2001 at 10 p.m., exactly 1 day before Adult Swim. Take that, America! Oh, and the Detour launched fall 2002. This was another block that passed me by, but looking at my old Teletoon retro recordings, I was pretty close to seeing something. It started out as a 2-hour block, airing Friday to Monday from 10 to midnight and later 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Every show, regardless of content, had an 18+ rating, probably to make the adults and kids, let's be real, feel cooler about what they were watching. The block's bumpers helped with that too, a swinging nightlife vibe and a sweet color palette. I love the use of red here. I'd feel cool watching this. And I gotta give a special mention to the Unleashed website too. I mean, just look at this thing. Granted, most of the links are dead, so the grooves of MC Sweet Tea are lost to time, but this central hub lives on. Even some of the mini sites it links to are semi-functional. Now, despite the branding for Unleashed, they still aired regular Teletoon interstitials like Edward, the cartoon that said it's okay to eat animals so there'd be food left for vegetarians. Shows like Undergrads had regular Teletoon branding too, and before the block reran later in the night, you'd get a helping of some 60s Spider-Man, Robo-Roach, or Bugs Bunny and Tweety. The lineup starting out had a few Canadian shows, some American ones. In 2002, Spawn showed up here, but so did another short-lived HBO show, Spicy City. Who says you needed premium cable to get the good stuff? But they also had shows from basic broadcast, like the holy trinity of WB primetime cartoons. The Oblongs, Mission Hill, and Baby Blues. Real quick, I gotta tell you about Baby Blues history on Teletoon. It showed up in 2002, 1 year after Oblongs and Mission Hill, airing on base Teletoon Sundays at 7:30. Alongside other comic strip shows, for better or for worse, and Dilbert, they had their own block called Weekend Funnies, but later on, Baby Blues aired in Unleashed, going from a light PG all the way to 18+. I'd love to get my hands on that cut of the show. What's WB hiding in that water tower?
Happy birthday, baby.
Whoa, hello.
As for the Detour, that started as a block for teens, or the maturely immature as they called it. It aired every night from 9 to 10, soon extending to 11, and this was 7-year-old me's gateway into older skewing cartoons. It was a mix of kid shows, with some edge to them, and teen shows like Aqua Teen, Spy Gru, Futurama, and Family Guy. Family Guy in particular was a big deal. We nabbed it a few months before Adult Swim did, and get this, it was because Teletoon's then president Len Cochran got the suggestion from his son. After Fox canned it in 2002, seemingly for good, he and his friends couldn't watch it anywhere, so he said, "Dad, get it." That kid changed the course of Canadian TV and a lot of childhoods with that demand. I would be so proud of myself if I did that.
Hi, I'm Peter Griffin. You're watching Family Guy on Teletoon.
For the kid shows in Detour, you had Ren and Stimpy, Time Squad, The Tick, Ripping Friends, but it was also the home of Billy and Mandy, back when it was called Grim and Evil. We actually aired it as Grim and Evil up to 2005, well after the segments spun off into their own shows. We never even got the Evil Con Carne show up here. Billy and Mandy always had a PG rating in Canada too, so even though it is not a Family Guy, it made sense to put it here. Although when we finally got Grim Adventures, that aired on Teletoon at 8:30 just before Detour. And so did Futurama, sometimes airing before Billy and Mandy. Isn't Canadian TV crazy? As time went on, Unleashed became redundant. While it extended to weekdays, the block was only 90 minutes long by Fall 02 and 60 minutes by 04. On March 15th that year, Jesse Bettridge, who I've actually become acquainted with in the years since, posted on the Toon Zone forum saying he called Teletoon that day to ask what was going on with Unleashed. They said the block was on hiatus and would return either in the summer or the fall. Fun fact, when I was looking up this bit of info, I found it 20 years to the day it was posted. That's when I said to myself, this is why I was born. At this point, Unleashed was starved for new content. Unless your name was Quads, everything else capped out at 13 episodes. So come fall 2004, the Detour took over entirely, where it got a bit more mature and had a fresh new look. This facelift was done by Toronto's Guru Studio, who made bumpers for Teletoon in the past, plus stuff for YTV and Kids WB. So if you're like me, you've probably seen their work. For this rebrand, Guru had a few things to follow from the higher-ups. To use a palette of warm reds and yellows, and to make, quote, a fantasy urban psycho space, a set of words nobody's ever used in their life. Playing off the Detour name, Guru made a bustling downtown setting, where we follow a guy named D and his robot dog /PDA/GPS named B. It's a city that never sleeps, with traffic and danger around every corner, but D&B handle it all with style. Speaking of style, the art direction took cues from modernist culture of the 1960s and early 2000s. The characters were inspired by pop art, and they made a deliberate attempt to use kitschy typefaces, another set of words I've never used before in my life. Hands down, this was my favorite era for the block. I loved the D&B segments and totally got invested in their world. I mean, a dude and his dog getting in and out of trouble, always a winning combination. There's even this lady that D bumps into, and as brief as their hookup was, I thought they made a cute couple. Now, with a look like this, some good music would help set the mood, and so they called on the talents of Montreal's Kid Koala. Maybe you've heard of him. Among his body of work, he's done some music for films like Shaun of the Dead, Baby Driver, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, a true Canadian classic right there. The co-director on the Detour project, Mark Cutler, was also a fan of his graphic novel Euphonia Must Fall, a book with 300 pages and no dialogue, and covers subjects of urban life, falling in love, some robots sprinkled in. I'm probably selling it short, but he was the right man for the job, and it all sounds great. Nothing that'll get you tapping your toes per se, but it still stuck with me decades on. I guess I'll briefly bring up F Night 2 while I'm here. This happened in fall 2006 and featured 6 new shows on Friday nights, all from Adult Swim. Space Ghost Coast to Coast made its Canadian debut here, and it only took 12 years and already running the Brack Show and Harvey Birdman before it finally happened.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons' command.
F Night had some pretty cool bumpers too. I really like what they do with the colors here. Man, they did so good with all this. One of the coolest rebrands I've seen for a TV block. Now I know there's even more Detour history to cover, and don't worry, I won't leave you high and dry, but I said I'd be talking about some of the Detour shows, and I don't want to wait any longer. So let's talk about some shows already, huh?
Don't pry your hands off the dashboard. You're still on the Detour on Teletoon.
Cybersix, alive? My most profound failure, alive.
You can come after me, but I won't run.
If you feel danger's grip, should its shadow consume you, breathe deep and always remember, I am your sworn protector. Just don't call me Missy. Yeah, buddy, we're starting off with Cybersix. I talked about it in my first video on Canadian TV, but I've grown a lot since then, and also, I'll take any chance I can to talk about Cybersix cause it's just that good. Technically, this is not a Detour show, predating the block by a few years, but at the same time, it kind of is. During its rerun life, it found a home here from time to time, as well as on the unnamed night block preceding it. I first caught Cybersix when I was 5, where it intrigued and terrified me, but my first proper watch happened in 2007 when it aired at 7:30. This is a show you could squeeze in anywhere and it made a good fit. Based on an Argentine comic book of the same name, we follow Cybersix, a leather-clad, statuesque superhero with the coolest cape you have ever seen. She protects the town of Meridiana from mad scientist Von Richter and his unholy creations, plus his little ankle-biter son Jose. He carries out his dad's work and gets up to his own schemes. When Cybersix is off duty, she poses as a male high school teacher named Adrian Seidelman and strikes up a friendship with Lucas, the ever-lovable science teacher built like a fridge. Winning trope right there, buddy. Living this double life, she tries to keep her identity under wraps, on top of any romantic feelings she has for Lucas. Oh, and did I forget to mention Data 7, her brother that was reborn as a Black Panther? This show's got it all. If you still need convincing though, let me paint you a picture. You know those episodes of Batman the Animated Series done by Tokyo Movie Shinsho, i.e. some of the best animation ever? Cybersix is like that if it was on crack. The whole show was done by TMS and it's some of the most beautiful stuff you'll ever see. All razzle, all dazzle, and goes great with the comics art style. The way they draw hair is so cool, and it flows with such beauty and grace. Even stuff like sideburns and body hair grabs your attention. I always thought they looked like French fries. TMS also lent their talent to some of the biggest cartoons of the 80s and 90s. If you see a really flashy Animaniacs or Tiny Toons, chances are someone behind it has Cybersix on their resume. When they stopped working on Western shows, we lost something truly special. It came down to increasing production costs and blah blah blah, and Cybersix definitely looks expensive, but according to the show's producer Hervé Bedard, each episode only costs $360,000 to make. For comparison, Bob and Margaret had more money thrown its way per episode, and that show is great, take it from me, but it's not looking like Akira, which TMS also did by the way. Maybe that's why the sound design is a bit crap in comparison. They use the most Hanna-Barbera sounding stuff for any action or comedy, and music cues can be pretty rinky-dink and repetitive. Stan Lee was quoted as saying the soundtrack was beautiful and haunting, but I'm guessing he only saw the intro and outro. Some of this sounds like it was ripped out of Pokemon Stadium. It kinda clashes with the visuals, but I'd argue it makes up the show's identity. On that note, there's also a few cheesy moments in dialogue, a couple odd line reads, but I find it charming in a campy B-movie kind of way. Like when Lucas turns into a werewolf and terrorizes people. It looks stunning, and then Cybersix chimes in with, "Oh Lucas, don't do that." Like she's talking to a dog that stole her slipper. Then there's episode 12, the one with Griselda. Love everything about this one, but at the end when Griselda lets go of the rope to save Cybersix from an oncoming train, she falls in this tweened pose for like 5 seconds and I just burst out laughing. But that's the thing, I was still having fun watching. Trust me, there's more than enough good stuff here, and it only gets better with each episode. I've watched it a million times, but the pain of knowing it ends after episode 13 never fades. I mean, it ends nicely enough, it's not the worst cliffhanger ever, but I'm still watching it! I wanna see what happens! I need it! I need to see Lucas and Cybersix's relationship going forward, and Jose is still out there somewhere, gathering power! Okay, that's 2 Invader Zim references, sorry. Teletoon had a mini website for Cybersix, which shed more light on the world and characters than the show ever did, including notes and art straight out of the show Bible. Thank God this is all still intact on the Wayback Machine. How else would I have known Cybersix's hat was a sound radar? Could've helped with those screaming gargoyles, I don't know. One part of the site, called The Future, just served as a complete tease. All it ever said was, did Cybersix survive the finale? Will there be a season 2? When news becomes available, Teletoon will let you know. From 2000 to 2003, this page never changed. Some fans must have checked in daily for any kind of update, and all for nothing cause news never broke. Not cool. A big blow to its success was how it did in America, where it had a brief run on Fox Kids and bombed. I just think it was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Fox Kids was a sinking ship by 2000, and even without my bias to Kids WB, I think it would have done better there. I mean, it looked like Batman, and he was doing stuff on WB Fox never allowed. Remember that time he killed an alligator, or when Montoya went pantsless to work? If not the WB, how about that Toonami thing I've never seen? It worked for Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Hamtaro. This lady could have been a Titan like the rest of them. And I mean, Cybersix herself ticks off a lot of boxes for a lot of people, and I'm only saying that because it was all by design. On the Blu-ray release, they got the show's entire production Bible on the disc, and it is a trip of a read. You got alternate takes on characters, changes in content, the radar hat, but they also note how they wanted a certain set of eyes on Cybersix, and here's some of what they said. We want every teenage boy watching the show to wonder what it'd be like to have Cybersix in the back seat of his dad's car. She's an animated character, but teenage boys have aggressive imaginations when it comes to sex. If we can push those buttons, we'll have an audience. Not to say that girls don't have aggressive imaginations. I don't know where you guys messed up, but that didn't work. How did that not work? And truthfully, while I see the appeal, I never had a crush on her. Took me until We Bare Bears to know what an animated crush was all about. Call me crazy, but I've got a gut feeling this show will get some kind of follow-up someday. Someone out there has the gumption to try, but if they're worried the fan base isn't big enough, I'm just gonna say it right now. What are you scared of? When the show dropped, there was no fan base, and that didn't stop anybody. You can only go up from here. I've thought a lot about how I'd reboot Cybersix if I had the power, so if any TV bigwigs are watching, take some notes. Feel free to steal. I'd of course get as much of the old cast back, and if you can't get TMS on board, get Flying Bark. With Ninja Turtles and Moon Girl under their belts, they know comics and cool animation like nobody else. Also, give us the full theme song, and make sure Jose's theme is brought back too. I actually really like that theme. Tone-wise, keep it similar to the original, or if you want to get a tad edgier, use Batman and Samurai Jack as a template, and keep all the iffy stuff from the comics out. I'm okay with new stories and whatnot too, just as long as it's good. If Cybersix doesn't get rebooted during my lifetime, I'd be legit shocked. Till that happens though, I'll be watching the original a million times over again.
Next on Teletoon Unleashed, Undergrads. Teletoon, it's unreal.
1, 2, 3, 4. Da-na-na-na,
Come on, Gimpy, hurry it up.
I'm going.
Now for something a bit more conventional, but classic nonetheless. It's Undergrads, baby. You got Nitz, Cal, Rocco, and Gimpy, 4 lifelong friends going through freshman college life and everything that comes with it. Except for actually attending classes, but that's not important. This is another one that predates the adult blocks. It aired as a sneak peek on Saturday, June 30th, 2001, and episode 2 aired the very next day, Canada Day. In retrospect, that is some amazing restraint because once it was in circulation, it was locked in for a long time. Teletoon liked doing that with original programming, and if it was a short runner, all the more reason to run it into the ground. I was gonna joke about how people got sick of it, but I found a bunch of old online posts of people ecstatic that it was on, and I won't take that away from anyone. Still, it was the same 13 episodes on and off for 13 years. It last aired on Teletoon in 2014, where it also showed up on Adult Swim Canada, back when that was a block on CN. Quotes from the Adult Swim promo are etched into my brain. Things like, "I got my beer goggles on, I bet I look good," and "I like Star Wars a lot." Hooray! 2014 was also when I went to college for animation, and I couldn't escape undergrads there either. One of my teachers was a storyboard artist on it, though he went uncredited. I asked him why, and he said he didn't know, but ultimately he was just happy to work. Anyway, one of the first assignments our class got was on undergrads, which, is that meta? I'm gonna say that's meta. We had to do a storyboard and a comic strip about it, and got character sheets, backgrounds, and floor plans to nail the art style as best as possible. And what the heck, I'll show you what I made. It was a little daunting, especially the ink process, but it was fun making up a story and drawing these guys. And I got a good mark too. Undergrads might be a bit underground, but dude, it was used in a school essay in 2014. Fans say this show helped get them through college, but it literally helped me get through college. Somebody tell Pete Williams about that. Speaking of the college experience, I didn't do anything close to what these guys did. I didn't party, live on campus, do prank wars, or have any drive to do so. I just did my work and went about my day. But anyway, you go out on... Sorry. Even though I didn't relate much to the goings-on, I still enjoyed watching these guys go through it. I will say Gimpy's school reminds me of a high school I visited in 8th grade when we were looking at places to go for next year. It was also a technical institution. Emphasis on institution cause it looked like a prison. Long hallways and lots of gray walls. Probably doesn't look like that now, but it was nostalgic in that sense. And nostalgia's the name of the game with undergrads. A true period piece of the early 2000s. A time of Quake 3 sessions, Star Wars prequel hype, and no social media or phones, but there's still video chats and file sharing. It's dated yet modern and makes me feel all cozy inside. Adding to that is just the look of the show. I especially love how stuff is shaded. And you want to get super cozy? Let's talk about that soundtrack. Early 2000s pop and rock hits that sweet spot for me, taking me back to hearing those songs in a Scooby-Doo or Pokemon movie. I'm partial to Ode to Mannheim Steamroller. Not the best lyrics, but I love it all the same. And the show's intro, The Click by Good Charlotte, is so good I played it on loop for 10 minutes once. Just don't mention Good Charlotte to any Donkey Konga 2 players out there, they've suffered enough. The main group of friends are always fun to watch. They all fall into different archetypes and bug the crap out of each other, but they have a genuine friendship. The episode where they play Risk is a testament to that, definitely one of the best episodes. It also blows my mind knowing they're all voiced by the show creator Pete Williams. Well, sorta kinda. Rocco's voiced by someone else in the Canadian version, i.e. every print of the show that's not the lost MTV run. They needed a certain amount of Canadian actors for tax reasons, and that extended to the main cast. The credits only list the actors' names, but my best guess for Rocco is this guy here, James Key, and he does a great job. Everything out of Rocco's mouth had me dying, and he might be my favorite member of the group.
That little green rancid clam juice inspired hallucination is right. You gotta pay for cigarettes here? What is this, communism? Wussy! I'll kill you all in your sleep! You hear me? I'll kill you all!
I was curious what the original sounded like, and watching an episode from the MTV run, I could barely tell the difference.
Like I'm gonna miss my pizza to hang out with a bunch of nerds. And Cal.
You know, Rocco, you're being a jerk right now.
I'm vaguely aware, sure.
Like I'm gonna miss my pizza to hang out with a bunch of nerds. And Cal.
You know, Rocco, you're being a jerk right now.
I'm vaguely aware, sure.
In episode 10, when Rocco is shaping Cal to be more like him, Cal does an impression of Rocco.
Yo, Rocco, let me crash here tonight. I'm freaking tired, and your punching made me woozy. We can knock back some brews together.
Normally that's a case of an actor doing an impression of another character he plays, but here it's an impression of a guy doing an impression of the original guy. Is that meta or just insane? All the other characters are pretty great too. I didn't think the Dougler would win me over, but by golly he did, and I also loved the crazy RA at Gimpy's school. She's only in 3 episodes, but I wish we saw more of her. Well, actually we get exactly that in her last appearance, but that's not what I meant, I swear!
Remove yourself, scum!
So with all that said, I didn't watch Undergrads in its entirety until 2024, but I'm still a big fan. Watched it twice over, got the DVD off eBay, even messed around on the show's old website. That was brought on by this DVD-ROM feature, which didn't work on my computer, but imagine my shock seeing the site is mostly archived. You got compressed sound clips, desktop wallpapers, even a choose-your-own-adventure game you can play right now. The site was even nominated for Canada's most popular website at the 17th Gemini Awards in 2002, and won! Not bad for a show that was dead on arrival. And with many shows I've watched, I had some crazy good timing with Undergrads. Fans know a movie's been in the works since 2014, then there was radio silence by the end of 2022, and it was presumed dead. So the day after I finished my first Undergrads watch, I saw something in my feed called Gimpy's Apology Video. I thought I was dreaming. But as of January 2024, we've got updates on the movie again, and Pete Williams seems dead set on getting it made. To devote so much of your life to a show like this is a special kind of crazy, but also very admirable, even inspiring. Godspeed, Pete. If anybody can make this happen, it's you. Oh, and thanks for Undergrads, guy!
Now back to the Detour on Teletoon. More maturely immature curves ahead.
Tonight, on a very special Clone High.
A nagging part of my brain was telling me, you should have talked about the high school show before the college one, but that kind of logic keeps you in a rut. Let's get weird with it. Milk before cereal around here. You know it, you love it, it's Clone High. Even though this show and Undergrads are polar opposites in their setting and tone, I only see what they have in common. Short-lived MTV darlings whose flames were kept lit by Canucks, both have the funniest I Am 21 drinking jokes ever, and they both took me ages to watch all the way through. Though in Clone High's case, I was more aware of it back then. Being on YouTube in the 2000s, I saw a lot of say what memes.
Say what?
Say what?
And like Undergrads, just when you thought you saw the last of it on Canadian airwaves, it reared its stylized head.
Say what?
As of this video, it last showed up on Adult Swim Canada in 2022, and for all that channel's faults, it's opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. Like how you can take Pelswick, a kid's show that aired on Nickelodeon, and just re-rate it 14+ and that counts as content. Like, you guys know John Callahan made an adult cartoon, right? Quads is right there. Whatever. Anyway, Adult Swim Canada, that's when I finally watched Clone High, and boy did it live up to the hype. Tons have said it before me, but this show is a riot. It makes me laugh so hard I'm gasping for air, even if I've seen the joke a million times before. I actually saw the first 2 episodes at a friend's house years earlier, and I remember the Food Pyramid song had me in stitches. I still sing the part about sweets to promote good eating habits, to varying degrees of success.
When you eat your sweets, make sure you try to limit your servings or you'll die!
The show even has me laughing at stuff I'm guessing they didn't intend to be funny, like whenever Cleo's just staring off into space when she's not talking. I think she looks like a little baby. And this scene where she gets mad and shakes her head?
I wanted something that was A, expensive, B, bought, and C, not lovingly handcrafted.
I don't know, it just cracks me up. I also have this bad habit of calling her Chloe, cause yeah, she's the clone of Chloe Patra. What are you, stupid? I mentioned this show was 18 plus on Teletoon Unleashed, but it kind of earns it with the uncomfortable violence that comes out of nowhere. Just about the one thing I don't gel with. Not all 14 plus shows are equal, and if Clone High's in that camp, it teeters on the far edge if you ask me. Way more intense than Pelswick. Some also say this is only Canadian by technicality, if that Nelvana logo isn't enough for them, but I say it's technically American. The show started and ended its run here in pretty short order, where the States tapped out halfway through, with no legal way to watch the whole thing until 2016! 14 years! Now, there was a DVD which kept all the licensed songs, unlike the digital releases, but oh yeah, that was made for the Canadian market. Anyone importing that must have thought, what the heck is a Detour? The powers that be could have worked with anyone, but they chose us, and they gotta live with that fact. But hey, just in terms of storyboarding, there's some legends at work there. One of them was Robin Budd, who, among his body of work, was one of the guys behind the look of the Ruby Gloom cartoon. But another name that blew my mind seeing here was the late, great Ted Bastine. If you saw my Freaky Stories video, which you should, that's the guy Ted's Diner was named after, and he was a great friend of Freaky's creator, Steve Schneer. There's also Arna Selznick, who I mentioned in my Dog City video, but when I spoke to Steve, he told me she's the third female director of an animated feature in the history of cinema, and she gets no recognition for it. Yeah, it was Care Bears, what of it? I was a bit bummed hearing Nelvana wasn't attached to the reboot, but I'm sure they're content knowing they were involved with the show at all. Probably cheaper for them too. Still, the reboot's animation was done in Ottawa, so that's something. Speaking of which, I thought the reboot was pretty good. Again, wasn't crazy about the blood, but a lot of jokes still had me rolling, and Shel Silverstein was worth the price of admission alone. Nowhere near as terrible as the internet let on, though I still do miss Gandhi, and I love/hate their insistence on keeping him in the freezer. But the second they change their mind, I'll be ready to bust out the classic Robot Chicken line, "It's Gandhi! I can't believe it, it's Gandhi!" Still, that first season is legendary. I'd say go watch it, but who am I kidding? You're probably queuing up an episode right now. So I'll just leave you with this. Was it crazier that this came back before undergrads, or not? I don't really know. All I know for sure is I can't wait to see what they do with another season. Oh, come on!
Sorry I'm late. I was trying to get a hold of Brody.
Forget about Brody. I mean, all we have is each other for now.
I agree.
Philip?
Yeah, sure, it's fine with me. I mean, Brody's basically not a fun guy, so...
All right, let's do it. So, we're going to Poland, right? To the lab?
Right.
Yep.
So this is the place where it all began. Or ends.
Damn, I love when you talk like a mission commander.
Now we're in the home stretch of this retrospective, and I wanted to save the best for last. Yeah, this is what I believe is the best original Detour show. This right here is Delta State. We follow a group of 20-somethings, Philip, Martin, Claire, and Luna, who remember nothing about their lives prior to the last 2 months. Or 6, according to the back of the DVD. Whatever, I'll cut them some slack, they're amnesiacs. They all have psychic powers too, which allow them to enter a parallel dimension at will, the titular Delta State. Under the guidance of their mentor Brody, they also protect humankind from a group called Rifters, who want to control our minds and take over the world. All the while, they're trying to find out where they came from, where they're going, plus the age-old young people struggles on top of that. Out of all the shows I've talked about today, Delta State is the one that was entirely new to me. I probably saw it in passing, but no memories beyond that. I wouldn't blame you if you thought you dreamt up this show either. Google its name and the first results are a university in Cleveland or somewhere in Nigeria. I was properly introduced to Delta State on February 1st, 2021 via Adult Swim Canada. It was the 6th episode, and while I had no context for the story, I didn't care. I just watched it in awe, and here's proof via this tweet I made at the time. 4 minutes in and I was hooked. Like Cybersix, this show is based on a comic book thought up by Douglas Gayton in 1997. However, unlike Cybersix, it never got published. If you remember reading it, that was for sure a fever dream. Those opening credits are lying to you. Still, that comic led to a TV pilot, and folks liked it enough that they wanted to see more. The show's also noteworthy, being the first TV cartoon to be entirely rotoscoped. For those unfamiliar, it's a technique where you draw over live action footage frame by frame to produce realistic movement. It might take some getting used to, but I can't imagine this show being done in any other medium. It just clicks. And learning how this was all put together, best seen in a making of feature on the DVD, I can't praise their work enough. The live action stuff was done in Montreal, filmed like a crack-fueled sitcom. Average sitcoms shoot 5-6 pages of script a day. Delta was doing 15, with this right here being their schedule for the 4 months of shooting. Side note, I'm shocked how much the actors resemble their characters. Like, that's actually Luna, that's actually Philip. It comes with rotoscopy, I know, but seeing the real thing still had me stunned. Side note, I like to refer to Martin as Frosted Tips Boomhauer. That footage was then sent to France for the boarding and artwork, rotoscopy done in India, special effects in Luxembourg, then back to Paris and Montreal for music and final touch-ups. How this managed to get 26 episodes and not just get axed partway through is a miracle. And big shocker, it didn't come cheap either. Each episode had a budget of $423,000, with the whole show totaling $11 million. Radar Hat Vampire Ladies got nothing on these kids, but they spent that money well. I mean, just on visuals alone, it's worth watching. It's got that perfect late night animation feel to it. It's 2 a.m., the lights are out, and you just see this on your TV. I want to say I experienced that long ago. Again, maybe tuning into Teletoon on a whim. This red sky gives me some serious deja vu, and maybe I didn't see it back then, but the feeling is still there. In an interview from the time the show premiered, one crew member says Delta's geared to a 12+ target audience, but they admit that demographic doesn't really exist. So rather than worry about what kids may or may not like, they thought about the kids they once were and made the show for them. They took a lot of influence from skater and surf culture, plus 70s cult TV series, which is super vague, but the show reminded me of stuff like The X-Files, The Matrix, Jet Set Radio, classic MTV, none of which I've consumed much of, but still. The show's music, however, done up by Kid Loco, really had me feeling nostalgic. The main theme, known in some circles as Another Snake, is something right out of a PS2 Ratchet & Clank game. And is it coincidence those were also scored by a France-born composer? I don't know. When an action scene starts up and the music kicks in, I'm taken back to killing sand sharks on planet Iridia. For another out there comparison, Delta State's also pretty similar to Persona 5. Yeah, I said it. I first played that in summer 2023, and having rewatched Delta State a few months prior, I caught myself saying, dude, this is just Delta State, a whole lot. My brother did the same thing, only he played Persona before watching Delta, so he was saying, this is just Persona. I mean, you got a group of superpowered kids looking for answers, villains who look like average Joes in the real world causing havoc behind the scenes. The Delta State is basically Mementos, being an alternate realm where good and evil collide, and while more Delta adjacent, these red paper ribbony things during a victory screen, they instantly reminded me of mid-2000s Teletoon branding. Delta premiered at the same time of the Detour's first rebrand, and it's a perfect fit visually. When I got Season 1 on DVD, it was the 2009 reprint sans Detour branding, and I never double dip, but it actually bothered me. So I bought it again, and I don't regret it. I did just say this show fit the Detour aesthetic, but compared to most of the Detour lineup, it's kind of an oddball, in that it's really smart with a complex ongoing plot. If you're someone who thinks they can put a show on in the background and consume it, Delta State will put you to the test and you will fail. Look away for a second and you'll miss a ton of details, and even if you pay full attention, you won't piece everything together. But don't worry if you get confused at any point, that's normal. I mean, these guys don't have it all figured out either. I commend this show for not treating me like an idiot, but I'm not a genius is all I'm saying. And even though Delta tries to play it straight, sometimes things come out looking a bit silly. maybe an odd delivery, or a byproduct of rotoscopy. Action scenes can be a riot, like in episode 8 with these rifters in lab coats getting vaporized, but there's one scene I always go back to. So Luna has future vision and she goes into a trance every time it happens, but sometimes they come out looking like, oh, well, check it out.
I hope the others are having better luck. Luna?
I know she's having a moment, but she looks like she's tripping out or took major offense at Philip, like, what did you say to me? Philip's actor even said acting some of this stuff out could feel pretty weird, but watching it, you know these guys gave it their all, making something out of nothing.
Sometimes I feel a bit self-conscious when I'm doing the Delta State stuff because you feel silly, you know, you're by yourself pretending to fly, but you're actually leaning on a table going like, you know, like this, and everyone's looking at you and you're like, I feel like such a moron. But the more you actually do commit to it, the better the result will be.
While the visuals are a big draw, I'd argue some of the best scenes are when the main characters are just talking and hanging out in their apartment or on the street. That's where you'll get some of the best dialogue, interactions, humor. It's all great stuff.
Been cooped up together too long. The pioneers used to call it cabin fever.
Don't pizza guys have to take some kind of oath or something? Like neither rain nor sleet, something.
That's the post office.
Well, that's brain dead. I mean, who's more important? The pizza delivery guy or the mail delivery guy?
Script-wise, you had guys in Montreal, some in Toronto, with one being David Cole, who I actually recognize from Bob and Margaret, and even France got in on some writing duties. This was all just a way for me to mention Vincent Bonjour, which I don't think you can get any Frencher than that. And when Delta needs to get serious, it can be done, especially as things progress. Not gonna spoil anything, but the episode Sweet Dreams has some great drama. Seriously gripping moments that hit me pretty hard, like almost shed a tear hard. Yet it still manages to have humor sprinkled in without being jarring. It's got a much better grip on tone than something like Demon Slayer, which I bring up because I was watching them around the same time and it was like night and day. Also, they both have DS initials. Also got some serious Mystery Incorporated vibes from Delta State. Watched them around the same time too. Throughout the hits and misses, but mostly hits, Delta's a fun time. And given I've been talking about shows that never got past 13 episodes, I'm glad these guys stuck around a little longer. They get time to tell a complete story, but with how things end, yeah, you just want to see more, which initially we were going to get. Apparently, Delta State did pretty well for itself. Good ratings, fan sites flourished on the web, and a hot topic at conferences held at North American universities. Dude, do you think they talked about Delta State at Delta State? I need to know! Not only was another 26-episode season greenlit, but also a full-blown feature film, and the team made it clear they were ready and excited for more. But sadly, higher-ups couldn't see eye to eye, so it all went belly up in another edition of Why We Can't Have Nice Things. You could say this show was a bit ahead of its time, but all these years later, there is definitely a place for it. I know there's people out there who will appreciate what this show did, so if you're looking for something different, Delta State can't come recommended enough. If it grabs you, you might just think it's one of the coolest shows ever. Before closing out, there's still a bit more to Teletoon's adult blocks, which I'll sum up now. Detour got a second rebrand in 07 along with the main network, which I liked a lot too. It's got the vibe of somebody punching your TV screen in, but according to Alan Shulman, one of the guys behind this look, it's what would happen if your TV gained sentience and had the mind of a rowdy teenager. A perfect description, honestly. Then there was the Detour successor, Teletoon at Night, which again, some think was always the block's name, though that's likely around the time those folks stopped watching. That aired weeknights in 09, with Detour pushed to weekends before it was phased out completely in 2010. Kinda like how Unleashed went out now that I think about it. At Night had super simple branding, but it did have a host in Fearless Fred. I loved quoting his promos and quips and content warnings of all things.
So if you're under 14, out you go. We don't want your kind around here. Parental discretion is strongly advised.
And I may be the only person on Earth to have recorded his final broadcast. During the 2010s, TAN competed with our Adult Swim block, with shows moving between the two, sometimes at a moment's notice. Archer Season 7, anybody? On that note, TAN's final years were a complete mess. In fall 2015, it turned into the H. John Benjamin Hour and a movie Monday to Thursday. In February 2016, Fred got the boot, quads popped up somewhere in the midst of all that and melted my brain. You'd think the writing was on the wall by that point, but in September, the block came back in full swing, now starting at 8 p.m. instead of 9. Ultimately though, Teletoon at night and Adult Swim petered out, replaced with an Adult Swim channel in 2019 where we've been ever since. Minus Quebec, where Teletoon La Nuit is still around. And look, Adult Swim is cool, but going back to Detour, we really had something there. Sure, we piggybacked, but we did our own thing too. In my opinion, just calling it Canada's Adult Swim sells it a bit short.
It's basically like the Canadian version of Adult Swim.
Quiet, you! And while we may never get a block like that again, folks like me will keep its memory alive, and hopefully with as much accuracy as possible. So the gauntlet's been thrown. I hope more retrospectives get made for the Detour, Unleashed, At Night. I welcome it all. But today, I tip my hat to the Detour. You may not have told me to get out of your pool, but you did take me on the most maturely immature ride of my life.
Thanks for taking the Detour on Teletoon. You may now resume your normal speed.
Thanks for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed what you saw. First and foremost, a big thanks goes to all the folks who uploaded their various Teletoon promos over the years. In particular, folks like Microphone, Nanotro, and Probnot. This video wouldn't be possible without them, so please, check out their channels when you can. Over on my Patreon, I want to give a shout out to Lars Niswant for his support, which really does mean more than you know. And if you out there want to support me more directly and get perks like seeing these videos early and behind the scenes blogs, feel free to give that page a look. But while you're here, you can like this video, give it a share your late night Teletoon memories in the comments, and all that other stuff I always go on about. And with all that said, I will see you all next time. Later.